Hello and welcome. My name is David Karofsky with the Family Business Consulting Group. I'm here today with my colleague, Jean-Meeks, Koch, who recently wrote an article called Controlling the Chaos, which, given our time right now, is probably very apropos. So, Jean, welcome and thanks for joining me today. And tell us a little bit about the article.
Great. Thank you, David, and I appreciate the invitation. So the article was, I don't want to say inspired, but it was somewhat inspired by the pandemic we're currently under. But I think that it has relevance not only during this time, but I think at other challenging times in the lives of family businesses, multi-generational succession planning.
Yep.
And the idea behind it is that, you know, we come across these times of uncertainty, and the level of uncertainty can be great, where we really don't see beyond the next 24 hours, which was definitely the case at the beginning of the pandemic. Every 24 hours we were having changing waters too. Maybe you can manage to see out there a little bit, but again, you're not quite certain what the end outcome is going to be. So how do you manage employees during this time? And I think one of the key things that I want leaders to think about is how, when your stomach is churning, how do you outwardly feel and look inspiring? How do you maintain a sense of predictability for your employees when everything else isn't predictable? Okay. So they're looking for that anchor. What does that anchor look like? So how can you become that anchor when your stomach is churning? And then also, how do you build your own resilience? What does resilience look like? And what do you need as a leader to be resilient? So these are some of the key things to think about and what I want to talk and share with you today. So one of the things that I encourage, or here are some leadership keys, do's, absolute do's, and then a few don'ts. Okay. So I think the big key do that I would like to encourage leaders to do is communicate.
Absolutely.
Okay. In absence of communication, people create their own story. And our mind is constantly creating a story based on its past experience, which may or may not have any relevance to what's going on now. So provide the story that you want your employees to have. So that's why I recommend in times of trauma, like the pandemic, to be able to provide consistent communication, consistent, authentic communication. And it is okay, absolutely okay to say, I don't have an answer for that yet. I'm working on that. And it's okay to say that. Too often we'll get leaders that are afraid to communicate because they don't have all the answers. Well, in times of trauma, we don't have all the answers. The waters are choppy, and in the chop, oftentimes we won't land the boat where we thought we were going to land it. So we don't have all the answers, and that's okay. It's okay to have that little bit of vulnerability. You don't have to have all the answers. The second key is to really
let me jump in there.
Ahead,
let me jump in for 1 second.
Yeah.
One of the things that I often, when working with clients, is I will talk to them about what you're talking about. Is we as humans are compelled to complete stories in our head, that we don't like incomplete stories. It just doesn't sit well with us. And so when there are incomplete stories, we're going to finish it with whatever level of information we have, whether we have 20% or 80% or 100%. And so as leaders, I think you're absolutely right that we as leaders of our businesses need to be able to provide our employees and our whole ecosystem with the information consistently across the entire system, so that everybody's more or less trying to complete the story with a high level of accuracy.
Yeah, so. I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Good information to really be aware of. And again, I also encourage leaders, when they think of what are they going to communicate, okay, look at the word relevant. What's relevant? And not necessarily relevant in the leader's eyes, but step into the employee. What is relevant to the employee. And I always encourage, go back in trauma and crisis, go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and go to the bottom of the pier, bottom of the pyramid, where we go back to physiological needs and safety needs. Okay, so oftentimes employees have now enjoyed that, and they're in the intangible, which is a sense of belongingness and a sense of recognition and self-actualization. But when something like this happens, all of a sudden, we're down at the bottom of the pyramid. We're worried about how are we going to meet our physiological needs, which is critical, right? That's the first thing we go back to. Will I have a job? Okay? That's top in the mind. Will I have a job?
And can I work in a safe environment? Physically,
Absolutely.
I don't want to be exposed, in this case. I also think that relativity is an interesting word because it's relative to your audience, that employees need a certain level of information. A board or an ownership group, their information is relative. It's different than an employee and the type of information they need as well.
Yeah. I absolutely agree, David. So that leads to the next one is know your audience, right? Who are you speaking to? So at times as a leader in trauma, you might have to speak to a larger group of employees or a larger group of stakeholders than you typically speak to. So make sure that you're speaking to the lowest level of the audience so that everybody feels included and not marginalized.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, great point.
Because, oftentimes I find that in trauma, we're thinking at this high level, this very strategic level, and then we have to relay our messaging to individuals that, they're block and tackle. They're nuts and bolts on the ground, right? And so we're getting this misfire. We're firing over their head, and then they're feeling like they got marginalized in the process. So be careful. Who's your audience? Speak to the level of the lowest individual. When I say lowest, I don't intend to be demeaning in any way.
No,
what
it's kind of like the lowest
is,
common denominator, so to speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That makes sense.
So recognize that. That's very important. Also, I think it's important to know your anchors. And what I mean by anchors are what are the knowing things, okay? And constantly repeat the anchors, because what people want is they want to know what's not changing, right? So even if you only have 2 or 3 things that you know are not changing, that is very, very important. Know what isn't changing. Okay? Know what isn't changing. So if your vision is still the same, make sure you remind people of your aspirational vision. That's really important. Make sure you remind them of your mission. Okay? You might have to navigate around to accomplish your mission, and that's what you're working on, but the mission hasn't changed. And then third, your core values. Make sure that those core values are anchors that your employees can trust. So go back and make sure, are you role modeling? Are you living those values? And remind employees how you are living those values and that you expect them to continue to live these values.
And you have to show it. You have to live it in every day. Show it and demonstrate those.
Absolutely. That's critical. And then I think the next thing in communication, and this is going to be more audience specific, and it might even be individually related, right, is performance productivity. Make sure that you realign expectations. So if the work environment has changed, so for example, right now we have many people that are working from home or they're on lockdown, stay at home, partial time, right? So that environment has changed. Don't hold them to the same productivity performance expectation.
You got to reset it.
Absolutely. A good example is if your office typically works from, 8 to 5, it would be foolish to think your employees working from home are going to punch in at 8 and leave at 5.
Yeah.
It's just not physically possible to sit in front of a video screen or sit in front of sit in front of a computer
Right.
in your home environment, which is very different.
Yeah. And
So
most
understand
people,
this.
probably most people who are working from home who don't typically, they don't have the setup to be able to work as efficiently or effectively from home. And so you've got to be able to balance that in. They have other, I'll call it distractions with home, with the kids and dealing with them in homeschooling. There's other factors in play. And so you got to I agree. You got to realign and kind of reset those expectations for productivity. It's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
Because otherwise, uh, there's such a dissonance between what you're expecting to be accomplished and what they can accomplish, and then you as a leader start start to be frustrated, and you might even get a little resentful at
Right.
your employees. So again, step into their shoes. What would it be like if you, as the leader, were living in a small apartment in New York City, and the only place you had that was now your office is the kitchen counter,
Right.
right?
Right.
With the dog there, or the cat there, or the child there, or another partner there trying to work at the kitchen counter also.
Yeah,
What
exactly.
would that look like to your productivity as a leader, right?
That's right.
So again, make sure you're thinking about those things.
Close as we
Um,
wrap up this discussion. Any other
yeah,
points you want to make sure you hit?
yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about speak a little bit to the don'ts. Okay,
Okay.
I've been hearing a lot of, well, the new normal. This is the new normal. This
Yeah.
is not the new normal. This is not normal. So don't try to normalize something that isn't normal. Okay. Be able to address that this isn't normal. This is a circumstance that's very different that that we're working to get through. And when we get to the other side, there will be another way of being. It won't be identical to how we were,
Right.
but there will be another way. This is not the way. So when we say, oh, this is our new normal, it's not our new normal. And I think that minimizes the impact that people are feeling.
Right.
So I think that's important to change that language.
Yeah, it is. It's a good point. And we don't know what it's going to look like. And it's going to look different
Mm-hmm.
for different people. Some people, it may go back to full normalcy. Some people, it's going to change. And I think flexibility and keeping an open mind as to what the future holds
Mm-hmm.
is going to be very, very important. And keeping, as you said early on, keeping that open dialogue is just going to be critical. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Yeah.
Come up with some motivational ideas too throughout the process.
Yep.
Think about what are some good quotes that you can start your conversations off with. Even encourage the employees when you're in conversation. Tell me one thing that's right in the world. I like that. Tell me one thing that's right in the world.
Right.
Instead of always what's going on that's wrong in the world right now.
Right.
There is a lot that is right in
There's
the
some
world.
amazing things that are happening right now. And you're right. We got to focus on those too. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah. And that keeps
Good.
people motivated. So those are
Excellent.
some tips for managing and leading during crisis and during trauma.
Perfect. Well, controlling the
So
chaos
thank you.
is just a critical thing for us to do as leaders, and particularly even leaders in our family businesses. And so appreciate you sharing some of your thoughts and insights today. It was just good stuff. I look forward to sharing that article all over social media. You'll get a chance to read that. If you want to learn more about the Family Business Consulting Group, you can visit us on our website at www.thefbcg.com. So thanks for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Thank you too, David.